right, what do you got?
I think I can prove to a judge that both of these men had the mens rea.
What the hell is a mens rea?
It's a legal term the lawyers use. It just means the intention to commit a crime.
Okay, come on, let's go.
Mens rea?
Put the cuffs on him.
How could we have gotten mens rea? We take blood? Can you do it without taking blood? We both use condoms. How is this possible? I want to see a doctor. Can I have an independent blood test?
Hey, money!
I feel sick.
What are you doing?
Mens rea!
The power of Christ compels you.
Before the
Don't get brazen with me.
He's the best lawyer in Miami.
Well, close enough to close enough to Miami. It's Steve Gosney, everybody.
I love it. That's so funny. How are you? Good to see you this morning.
I'm wonderful. Let me get a couple of housekeeping things out of the way here, and then we can get down to business. All right, everybody.
But not show
morning.
business.
Not show business, yeah.
Just business.
Oh, well, that reminds me. We got to find out what happened at our competency hearing yesterday.
Oh.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whoever you're with, whatever you're doing with that person, and however it feels.
Watch it.
Great to have you here. Legal Vices, it's Tuesday. We wouldn't usually have a show today because we've got trial coming up in about 90 minutes, but this has been in the works for a long time. Before we jump into that, we have the like and subscribe poll up. 230 people here already. So if you're just joining us, only 126 likes. Don't make me go all Andrew Bronca and threaten to shut this down if I don't have 50% likes. You know what to do. And unlike him, I take all super chats because, hey, well, he takes all super chats. I respond to all super chats.
But he doesn't yell at you if he
Yeah.
doesn't yell at you if you don't have if it's not of sufficient quantity, right?
Yes, you are all parting with your hard-earned money, regardless if it's a 99-cent sticker or a $500 super chat. So I respond to everything. All right, today's poll. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you have hit the subscribe button. If you are subscribed, make sure you're still subscribed because YouTube just deletes subscribers because they want to. Today's like and subscribe poll is I hit like and subscribe because Steve did it. I hit like and subscribe to help find the knife.
Yeah, that's right.
I hit like and subscribe because Steve always does it. And I hit like and subscribe to support Captain Gosman.
Okay.
There we go. That's the lame poll for the day. Just a little bit of fun to remind you to like and subscribe there. Well, we won't talk about that for a while. We'll check back in on the poll later just for fun. Where are the puppers? Both dogs are, they're each licking 1 foot under the desk and it's kind of wet and it tickles. But anyway, just thought I'd let you know that. Great. As I said, I think I've cleared everything all there in that one fell swoop. The super chats, not required. Not expected, gratefully accepted. Love them all. We're going to have a live show here today, a nice, relaxing show, hopefully informative. If it's accidentally comes from me, hey, great. But most of the informative stuff will come from Steve because it always does. We're just opening up to questions here. I don't know how many of you did the homework. I gave people homework yesterday to go back and rewatch the stream that we did. What was it, a month ago, 2 months ago already? Something like that, 6 weeks ago, however the heck long ago it was. We did that dealing with your appellate case that you crushed out of the ballpark and were one of the lucky approximately 6% that sees any good results come out of an appeal.
Actually, 0.6%. So that's 6 out of 1,000. And
0.6. I thought it was 6%.
No. 0.6%. So that's 6 out of 1,000. What we're talking about is that on criminal appeals, I did a study and it's actually in the last chapter of the book, which is Ideas and Answers in Law, on the appellate stuff.
Like that, starting the grift already.
Yes, already. The in the last chapter talks about, because we get these clients that are like, oh, I'll just appeal this, right? And we're like, no, you need to win at trial. We need trial's your best shot, because once you go to appeals, your chances are vastly lower. And they're like, oh, I don't believe you. You're just a public pretender, right? So what are my chances on appeal? Well, most trial lawyers, they don't know. And I specifically, I didn't know. In fact, I was ranting and raving about about the PCA. A PCA is a per curiam affirmed. That's a no written opinion. It's just a rubber stamp of whatever happened below. And so of all of our cases that we appeal, 95% of them are rubber stamp, no written opinion. 95% is just affirmed without opinion. which is ridiculous, but that's what the number is. And then if you add to the remaining 5%, 3% are state appeals. That's where the defense won below and the state wins 50% of the time. So those are 3% written opinions on state appeals. So then of the remaining 2%, the maximum chance that basically a lot of those are just meaningless, like, okay, a $5 cost of incarceration or $5 cost that we've added mistakenly. Guy's got a life sentence and we're worried about $5, right? Who cares? Means no difference to the client. So of that remaining 2%, the percentage that is meaningful to the client is at most 0.6%. Now, when I say at most, that means that sometimes you can't determine whether it had meaning or not. It could have meaning. So, for example, you could have sent down for a new trial, and I think I sent you one of those cases, the Taylor case. He got life in prison. We got a new trial. He went back to trial and got life again. So from an appellate standpoint, it was a very meaningful win. It was in the 0.6%. It was a win, but ultimately he ended up in the same place. So what counts as an appellate win? And of the 1,700 plus cases that I reviewed in that year, that's in the book, it's in the chapter reviews, there was one case out of 1,700 that went from guilty to not guilty. So your chances on appeal are infinitesimally small. Is that fair to say?
Well, as it all starts out with that basic old adage that appeals are for losers.
Yes, and this is true. And it's very difficult because most of our stuff is just silence, is met with silence. And I was thinking about doing an injustice series, and I could talk about all of the cases that have been rubber stamped, PCA'd, that are radical bits of injustice that have flown through the system and that are just don't even get heard about because it's buried under a paperwork. So, it's a PCA. Now, the Kelly case, if people, the reason we're here, you want to talk, my client has waived attorney-client privilege, maybe because it was such a big win. It's one of the biggest wins of my appellate career. I also do trial stuff, and I've done many trials. My board certification's in trials. So if we count trials, I've got many more what I would consider wins in trials that were more significant. But in the appellate world, when your chances are so low to get a case like this, occasionally they come along. So I can talk about this one. Now, I did send you, there's several oral arguments that are out there with me on them. So we can go a couple ways. We can talk about why you orally argue and why you do not, because there's probably 5 oral arguments out there where I'm working. That are on the web that you can look up. I've got another one that's in the pipeline that's coming up. It's another chapter in the book. In fact, if everybody has their books, because a lot of my fans are here, page 171, the $50 cost of incarceration case that I'm going to try to take to the U.S. Supreme Court. That I am going to orally argue. I've filed my initial brief. We're waiting on the answer. And when I do my reply, then I will ask for oral argument on that case. So,
and we're going to watch that live if we can at all.
If we can, yeah. Well, so I haven't been given any kind of permission to talk about the nitty gritty on that case. You can talk about the pleadings, and I'll let you go to town on whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Those are all public record. But as far as some of the insights, like I can give you insight into the Kelly case. So maybe that's where we should go first.
Yeah. Well, before we do that, let's clear off these super chats here real quick. What do you got here? Rick Nikeda starts as I've got to meet Steve in Vegas. Truly a humble person. It's just a shame nothing but spaghetti came out of my mouth.
I don't remember the spaghetti coming out of the mouth, but there was a lot of nice people there.
Probably a good thing. Michelle, what a good looking bunch you two are. And I got to put my hat. It's like weird to see me without a hat on. There we go. Now I feel comfortable again. So used to having the light shining off of me, but I finally figured out how to automatically set the lighting so it doesn't change automatically because I'm old. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. Deeply, deeply appreciated. Good. I guess it would be afternoon in South Africa.
Found the K bar yet? I have not.
Found the K bar yet.
The cheating way would be to order myself a new one and then say, "Look, I got it." But I'm frustrated. I really now it's like a challenge. It'll show up. It's around somewhere. I don't know where though. I'm completely bonkers baffled.
And Jason J, thank you so much for this super chat. New trial coming here in Wisconsin. Good stabby case of Morgan Lund. You interested? Probably not. We got the one we're doing now, and then a couple weeks from now, we should be starting. I mean, there's a lot of trials coming up in the next 2 or 3 months if they all stay on the calendar, but we'll just have to see. Who knows? And if anybody has heard what happened at, because it's not up on any of the search news yet, if anybody's heard what happened to the Taylor Business competency hearing that was held earlier yesterday, let me know. Hasn't made the news cycle yet because she didn't attack her lawyer, I guess.
I think didn't her lawyer, I don't know, very dapper. Oh, sorry.
Well, her lawyer recused himself. Then the new lawyer made a motion for the judge to recuse himself, and the judge said, "Nah, I'm not going anywhere." And then there was a competency hearing on the 6th, and we haven't heard the news of that yet. Looking very dapper today, gentlemen. Well, Steve is. He opted for the jacket at the last second. I didn't want to shock anybody by putting a jacket on, so I didn't. And Alan, read your 6-month memberships. Don't worry, we get there. But I'm assuming by that it means you have one. And Flux, Steve Gosney is the best. Pants are prison. Steve is wearing pants because I saw them.
Steve Gosney is best. Pants are prison. Oh, yeah, pants are prison. Okay, well, that's nice. No, there's pants. Hey, Flux, good to see you.
And the Dragon's Treasure. Don't let Steve's demeanor fool you. I once made a joke on his behalf. I haven't seen my children since. He never lets me forget.
And don't you ever forget T, Mr. T. That's right. Let that be a lesson to you all.
We're going to start calling him Mr. T from now on. And Alan, oh, yep. See, there we go. Member for 6 months of the Clean and Sober crew. Yes, 6 months, and I'm proud of it. Thank you very much. And Tony G, also a member of the 6 months. Clean and Sober crew. Congrats, Alan, right there with you. All right, so now that we've got that, we talked about the Kelly case a couple of weeks ago, and we're just throwing this open for comments. I know a lot of you had questions at that point in time. And I said, I just don't know the answers. We should have Steve on to talk about it. So we're having Steve on to talk about it.
Just to give a little reminder of what the Kelly case was, this was a fellow who was intoxicated, who had his 4-year-old stepson taking him to the park, and the stepson was on like a little Thomas the Tank Engine scooter thing where he just scoot. And then what happened was he was drunk, but he was walking him down the road. It was 4:00, sunny day, about 59 degrees out, and the kid was on his thing, and he was next to him stumbling down the middle of the road. It was a 25-mile-per-hour side street next to a playground. And so he was scooting down the road, and this off-duty cop comes up behind him in his car and honks the horn, and the guy doesn't hear him, doesn't get off the run. He honks it again, looks up, and takes the kid off to the side of the road, goes to the park. The kid starts playing in the park, and he's stumbling around.
But he was undeniably drunk, well above the legal limit.
Well, and that's one of the points I wanted, a little insight I want to give you on this oral argument, because that was, okay, there was some question about that. He was never tested. There was never any video of him, how drunk he was. And I was contesting the fact, you know, the level of drunkenness. Now, the problem is that when you're doing these kind of arguments, you don't fight on ground that you don't want to fight on. You pick the ground as your winning ground, so to speak. So if I wanted to contest the level of drunkenness, we would have spent the whole oral argument going round in circles about how drunk he actually was. When I don't think that his level of drunkenness was to the point of like, oh, he's stumbling, he's falling down. I'm a suspect on that, all right? So
the officer did say he fell down in the street, but nobody else in the neighborhood saw that.
Right. So I'm a little.
And it was a 200-yard walk from his house to the park.
Right. And so they were making. So if you remember the during oral arguments, the judge was like, let's assume he's just fallen down. There's no question. He's just fallen down. Well, I could have at that point said, well, actually, I question that. All right. But if I had done that, we would have wasted all our time bickering over how drunk he was, and we wouldn't have gotten to the substance of where my winning ground was. So I kind of basically conceded that level of drunkenness so that I didn't have to fight that battle. Does that make sense? See, that's a strategic decision I made in going in, that like, I want to argue about this. I don't want to argue about this. And so if somebody's coming at me, I'll just give it all day. Let's assume that he's fallen down drunk. Right. So that's sort of a technique, is when you're arguing, argue on your winning ground. Don't argue on your losing ground or stuff that will waste time that's not important.
So he walks the 200 yards from his house, essentially 200 meters for you metric people out there. Essentially walks the 200 yards from his house to the park, the local park, pushing his kid down the middle of an empty street, a 25-mile-an-hour street, 2-lane highway, I guess, one going each direction, sounds like.
It was a side street, really.
Yeah.
It was not they said it was a major thoroughfare, which was garbage.
Stupid. Yeah.
But
it had a line painted down the middle of it.
Right.
Yeah, so there's like one lane each direction, little back alley kind of place.
And there's another bit of information I'm going to share with you that I couldn't put in, but that was actually communicated to me by the client and his wife or his girlfriend, and that is that he actually has a hearing impairment. So the fact that he did not hear the initial honk is partially attributed to disability. Now, that was not in the record, so I couldn't really bring that up. You remember, I think I hypothesized that. I hypothesized that based on the facts that actually were in front of us. But I couldn't say that that's the facts because the comeback to the judge would have been, well, where is that in the record? And it wasn't in the record. But the fact is that he did have a slight hearing impairment. So he may have just not heard the initial honk.
And so, his child was 4 years old, pushing him on like a little push scooter or push car or something.
Yeah, one of the scooter things, you know.
Yeah, down the street, honk. He said honk once. He doesn't respond. Honk twice. He gets off the road and goes into the park.
Right.
Meanwhile, off-duty cop calls 911 to get an on-duty officer there. He plays with his kid in the park. So apparently it took a while for the cops to get there because he plays and then he wants to leave. And other people in the park essentially stop him from leaving.
Right. And he gets a little hostile with him. Of course, I would too. Well, who are you, Karen? All right. Get out of my face. I want to go home. And, and these people are like, hey, we care about your kid more than you do. And of course, and people may not, if people didn't see the original thing, this guy got charged with felony child neglect. He got 10 years in prison and $180,000+ fine for this criminal act, which in the after the oral argument, the court actually reversed and discharged him, saying it was not culpable negligence. So that was the result. But the ridiculous sentence off of a case thing that wasn't even a crime, to me is it shows you how the system just grinds people up. And most people, and I would say that there was one judge that disagreed. It was a 2-1 decision. So he just escaped by the skin of his teeth.
So he was convicted. He was sentenced to 10 years and $182,000 something fine.
Right. Now, the fine, like I said, I've got a case coming up that I'm going to orally argue that fine, because the fine, I've been working very hard on attacking that $50 a day cost of incarceration. That was an alternative point in the appellate brief in the Kelly case. But it is the main point it's not the main point. It's a side point on another case that I have that's going to the 5th. And I hopefully will take it all the way up the U.S. Supreme Court if I don't get relief, because this $50 a day cost of incarceration is insane. And I really am against it. And I think it violates the excessive fines clause of the U.S. Constitution. So that's the basis for that challenge.
Well, T3 asks, how long did he serve before the appeal was?
It was over a year and a half. He was in prison.
Ugh,
it's a nasty case, but it's not the only one. And, this was a win for us, but that is so rare as to be extraordinary. And I'm really blessed that the fellow has waived attorney-client, because I can tell you about this stuff, like about the fact that he's hearing impaired and that he wasn't. I really do not believe he was as drunk as they were. If you remember, they were really pushing that point. We're just making him so off the scale drunk that he's falling down, stinking drunk, right? It's unaware of anything. That was they were pushing that point. It was almost like they were seeking for me to react to that so that we could waste time on that point.
I did like the judge that sided ultimately with you on the appeal, the male judge that sided with you on the appeal, when he was saying if it's illegal to have a few drinks and play with children, everybody that's ever been to a barbecue is guilty of a crime.
Right.
And
Well, is it? I mean, that was my point. That where I wanted to win was: is it illegal to be drunk as a parent? And I think the other really good point that we had on our favor was that the drivers have a duty to look out for drunken people and children, and it's right in the statute. And so it's like, so this it's is it okay? I understand you shouldn't have to rely on others, but we do. You know, when you drive down the road, you depend on others following traffic laws. You depend on others to stop at the stop signs, stop at the stoplights, to not go the wrong way down the road. You know, your life is in others' hands every time you drive. And it's because we all obey the rules of the road. Okay, well, here's somebody who is leaning very hard on others to look out for them. Well, is that unreasonable? Well, maybe it's a little, but is it culpably negligent? Is it so negligent that you're just off the charts crazy? No, it's not. I mean, you know, the drivers aren't just
distinction.
What's that?
I say that's the distinction.
Yes.
Clearly, it's negligent to be walking down the middle of the street with your child just by default because you're not supposed to be doing it. But is it criminally negligent? Does it rise to that level of negligence that it justifies 10 years in jail?
Right. And that was, I'd say, the one misstep in my oral argument was I did like to sneak in the stuff about the civil standard, because I said this is not even civil negligence. If he was sued for civil negligence, and then the one judge who was against me said, well, this isn't a civil case. What's that have to do with it? And, you know, fair enough, except that it's kind of crazy that this thing is a 10-year in prison crime and it's not even a civil tort. To me, that just strikes me, but I get it that the civil tort requires injury. So fair enough. But, so I quickly moved on.
Even though it was a criminal case, they still made because that was part of, I guess, the child endangerment factor was the child was not injured.
Oh, he was happy as a clam. He was playing away. In fact, the only time he got upset was when they took daddy away in handcuffs and he was like, "Where's daddy?" And he got all upset. The rest of the time, he's happy as a clam. You know, it's crazy in the world of fatherlessness that we're going to help this family out by taking dad away for 10 years. I mean, come on. Are you serious? It's like, I don't know. It's so bizarre, but there you go.
Real couple of quick comments here. And then a couple of quick super chats to burn so I don't get too far behind. And then we'll take some of these questions here. Chicago Jan, thank you so much for becoming a member of the Legal Vices. Dang, I can't see which level membership it is. We'll assume it's we are. Green. It is the clean and sober level. Great. And Deborah Breeden says Oliver Green and John Stargell give false diagnosis. Cryptic. Okay.
Who is that? I don't know who that is.
I don't either. And Deborah Breeden also says second DCA Green and Stargell loan out judicial immunity. Again, cryptic. Okay. And second, DCA is for sale. Just pay market price to win. I don't have any idea what this is, and I'm assuming that you don't have any comment on it, Steve.
Well, the second DCA it may be the Florida second DCA. That would be the only thing.
That's what I'm guessing by the fact you're here.
You spent a year and a half in jail, Corn Pope. I see. I saw it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've been focused on that. I'm not following the chats like I do usually.
Yeah. And can Q Shaman appeal how exculpatory video came out of police escort and police opening doors for him? Brady violation, please explain.
Yes, well, that to me is a Brady violation, assuming that he did not get those videos in discovery. It's a federal case, though, so I'm not. Well, I shouldn't say I am federally admitted for, but my federal admission is for U.S. Supreme Court appellate briefs, not for federal trial. I've never done federal trial practice. It's one area maybe I could actually, it's the one area of criminal law that I could get. Oh, and Valhalla awaits. I did, and I need to thank you for that. So the question is, if it was not discovered, it seems to me that's a huge Brady violation. And I think that guy got prison, didn't he? So there may be a motion to withdraw a plea based on withholding of Brady material. And Brady is the duty of the government to provide exculpatory evidence to you before you plea. He pled without this information that the police had escorted him throughout the place. You write this down. Valhalla awaits. Valhalla awaits is a good guy. He's one of your mods.
He is. And Steven says, I wonder how many other similar cases there are
Well, like I said, there's a
Dozens,
lot.
hundreds, thousands, you know, I mean, not the exact same situation, but very, very similar where they get, especially these child neglect and child endangerment things, they can be used as as just a brutal weapon.
And it's like, and these state attorneys, prosecutors, judges, police, they don't care about this guy. They don't care about this kid. I'm sorry. It's a garbage thing. There's no replacing a daddy with government. You know, they want to get vengeance on somebody by like, it's like looking down from a chair of privilege, and we're going to grind somebody up to make us feel good that like, look what great parents we are. We're going to condemn this bad parent. So we're going to grind him up, send him to prison. And meanwhile, you got a little 4-year-old whose stepdad is gone. So it's like, oh yeah, you've done great things. If you should feel real good about yourself. I mean, it's really, it's ridiculous. You know, we represent the bottom end, and how we represent these people are really at the mercies of our society. And how we treat them, the compassion that we treat them, really needs to be scrutinized. It's not a throw. These are lives. People live in their lives the best they can. I mean, my guy, he had a little bit of a record. He had, you know, he's mostly misdemeanors. I think he had 1 felony. It's like ag assault. You know, it's not like he was Mr. Pure, but it's not like he's living the high life. You know, he's just an average, you know, average guy who drinks too much. You know, welcome to the club, right?
Well, I mean, and I get it. I don't. I guess you probably wouldn't be able to talk about the specifics of that area, but just generally, hypothetically speaking, what would, in your opinion, would drive a prosecutor to even bring a case like that to court?
Right. Well, and that's a very good point, because there should be a check on this judge, and this judge is the worst judge in the entire state of Florida. I will submit. And we deal with him. He's in my appellate jurisdiction. The viciousness that he inflicted on this person is just lack of compassion, and lack of understanding. It's like, throw people away, just throw them in prison, lock them in a cage. That's the solution to every problem, is prison, prison, prison. You know, the guy's clearly, he's got an alcohol issue. He's got problems. He needs help. I don't know if that's help. Whatever, even if you don't help him, throwing them away is not the solution. It doesn't fix anything. Now, the prosecutor really should be on top of it. They could control. They chose to charge him as a felony. They chose to put this on the table for him. They know their judge. So there is a lot of guilt, I would put, on the prosecutor for this. Yeah. They shouldn't. Now, what kind of games? It becomes an ego contest. It becomes like, I'm going to put the bad people away. A lot of prosecutors are hired right out of law school. And so they don't have a good understanding of life. They don't have an understanding of life as far as, you know, they've obviously, if they got through law school and successful and passed the bar, they have some level of privilege. They have some level of intelligence. They've got education. They're earning money. So they don't understand what it's like to be job to job, cleaning dishes, cleaning rooms for a living in a hotel, you know, drinking and living in a trailer and getting in fights with your drunk wife, you know, and struggling kind of day to day on the bottom rail, or maybe even being homeless, you know, being addicted, being on the bottom rung, right? And there's not much compassion. And sometimes that intelligence and economic success gets translated into moral superiority. I am morally superior to this person because look at me, I'm smart and I'm together and I don't drink. So I'm morally superior to you. Well, that is not necessarily, that does not flow. You are protected from the police. You are protected from situations in which you would normally have encounters for the police, which is entry into the system. But it doesn't mean you're a better person, right? It's not a moral comment that you're wealthy and articulate and intelligent. It's simply a gift God gave you. And same thing with these people that are, you know, they've been given a lot of bad cards. They've, you know, probably abandoned, they've gotten addicted. Those are all a lot of negative things, and it put people down. And I understand there is a component of moral failing, But there's a lot of people, like, I'd much rather hang out with like Valhalla Awaits and his baby goats, hanging out in the petting some goats and living on the farm. And I'm going to go see my friend up in West Virginia, and we love to sit by the cabin and sit around with good people who work hard, who like are electricians. My friend's a contractor, he builds decks, and he works with his hands. There's moral value in that. And those people, to me, are they go to church, and they don't lie. They try to do their best. They work hard. They raise their kids. That's what makes a good person. What you choose to do, not this like, because I'm in this superior power position, this elitist attitude. It really is something we need to humble ourselves, and be compassionate to those who are given less. Okay,
but it tends not to go that way.
I understand, but
because it definitely should. But it seems that the more power that prosecutors get, the more they wield it. The less compassion there is. We
need to really check the prosecutor's power. Prosecutors are way too powerful. And I understand, because my mom's a big Fox News person, and I've been, people watch Fox News, and I like Tucker, and I like the alternative narrative, right? I'm glad that it's out there. However, there is a counter narrative, and one of those narratives and I'm a very conservative guy, but one of those narratives that they like to push is that, like, they'll put on this, all these criminals are getting away with everything, and they focus on these Soros prosecutors who are letting people out. That is not most of the country. That's not in my jurisdiction. And it's not what's happening in this courtroom. It's the exact opposite, is that people on the bottom rail are just being ground up. And we need to be very careful about that. It's not humane. It's not a good thing. But what happens is people say, well, I'm against the criminals, so I'm for the prosecutor. I'm for individual rights. I'm for freedom. I want the system to work. I don't want to just have it be lopsided so that you can't ever oppose the state. Look what happened in January 6th. Is that we powered the prosecutors? It's a big railroad. Is that what we want? No, I don't want that.
Well, the very first case I was ever involved in, I got a clerk job, my 2L, my second year of law school. The very first case that the guy worked on was a case involving a young prosecutor named Gill, who is currently the district attorney in Salt Lake that Danny On ran against. And that first encounter soured me against him for the rest of my life from that point moving forward. That's why I was so happy when Danny decided that she was going to run against Gill, because just from the jump, he was just a dick is the only way I can describe him. The first case was a police officer, young police officer. I think he'd been on the force 2 years. He made the mistake of seeing a Leatherman tool in the evidence locker that he really wanted. And he stole the Leatherman tool from the evidence locker. He lost his job. He'll never get another job in public service. He lost his marriage. He lost basically custody of his child because he didn't have a job and had no way to support it. He was working part-time in his uncle's garage fixing cars. And Gill was asking that he be thrown in jail for 5 years.
Yeah, it's like, how much is enough?
And that's exactly what the judge said. He gave this big flowery speech about he betrayed the public trust. He needs to pay the ultimate price because he made the ultimate sin of breaching his public duties. He swore to, and that's exactly what the judge said. The judge says, at what point do we temper justice with mercy? What else does he have to lose, and what justice will be done by giving him the relief? By giving you the sentence that you're seeking.
Well, and not all cases are death penalty cases, and this is I think I've told you about the case with the person who stole the can of spray paint and got 19 years in prison she stole a shoplifted from Walmart a can of spray paint and got 19 years in prison. She's a 48-year-old woman. She had a very bad past.
That wins. What?
Yeah, well, she had, and I like to talk about this, was about the viciousness of our system. And it took a bad prosecutor to me, why should they ever charge us? Well, She had done 10 years in prison in Oklahoma because in 18 and 19 years old, she had done a string of robberies, like 10, 15 robberies, did 10 years in prison for Oklahoma, and got out when she's like 28. Sometime within the last 10 years, she stole like a $380 object of some sort. So she had a prior theft. Well, when she steals this can of spray paint in Florida, it becomes felony petty theft because of one prior. Because it's a felony, she gets this thing called the score sheet. And the score sheet scores old convictions when you have a conviction in the last 10 years. And those included 10, 15 robberies. And because of that, she scored 19 years in prison. She's in prison now. And it's like, it was PCA. That's one of those PCAs that we got. It's like that sort of thing gets buried under the system. And to me, that's vicious prosecutor. As a conservative taxpayer, it offends me that my taxes are going to support that person, because it's like, why should my taxes be used to house somebody for 19 years for that kind of minor crime? Not everybody. See, the thing is there is let me push on the other side. There is absolutely a subset of people that are highly dangerous, commit most of the crimes. There is a subset of people, and these Soros type prosecutors are losing that. That's why they get high crime, because they are letting everybody go indiscriminately. And the real criminals, the ones that are violent, who are the serial criminals, do get let back in the system, get let back into society wrongfully. All right. So the way to reduce your crime overall is to focus on those who are serial criminals that are actually dangerous. Mm-hmm. But that's 1 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 20. The vast majority of people are simply people with drug issues, mental issues, or poverty, who are just close to the system. They're homeless. And those are not people that are really threatening to us as normal, hardworking people. They're just average folk on the bottom end who are just getting ground up, but they are viewed through this lens of, you're the one that's going to cause all this crime. So if we can lock up all these people, then the society will say, well, let's just lock everybody up. I mean, it's like
yeah,
that's right. Okay.
Well, that's the famous case when they started doing the 3 strikes laws. The guy steals a slice of pizza and he immediately has a life sentence.
Right. It needs to be individualized, and it's tough. And the problem is that there will be mistakes made when you individualize the decision making. There will be mistakes, so you can't predict future criminal behavior, really. Now, sometimes you can, but generally you cannot. I mean, crime is a reactive thing. It's something that crime happens and the state punishes back. I always say something bad happens and the state does something bad back. So it's all negative. It's destruction, but it's required, but it's destructive. So, anyways,
there are some. Well, that's what we're here for. There are some questions I've caught. There's been a bunch of questions, but sure. I've managed to catch a few of them. So
sorry, chat. I'm not on following the chat as much because I'm on deck here. So
we're busy.
We're business.
Rose says, I crossed a track on a hill and almost hit a woman walking in the road with her little child on a leash in the middle of the lane. Scared me to death. She was sober. And that's one of the arguments that was made in this case. Mm-hmm. The drivers, they have a duty to expect the unexpected in the road. They have a duty to be extra careful and paying attention to what's in the road. So lucky you saw that. I mean, that's a good thing. You can't just, here's someone in the road, it's not my fault, and run them over.
Well, I will say one incident that I remember when I was a kid and I was just driving. I mean, I was 18, 19 years old, and I was driving along. It's a 35 mile per hour zone. I was just driving along, and thank God I was paying attention, but it was twilight, so it was kind of going dark.
Oh, I hate
and
that.
Right in the middle of the road was a little baby crawling across the road.
What?
And I'll tell you, I mean, I don't know, for some, God bless me at that day, that I was paying attention, and I slowed down and I stopped, and the baby's right there. And then this mother comes running out from her house. Oh my God, my baby. And she comes running, she grabs the baby and picks him up. I was like, it was one of the worst nightmares.
That would be hard
to this day, I remember that. And it's like, if I had just been looking down on the radio, there, but by the grace of God go I, right?
Jeez. That's the other thing. Mom told don't run over the box. There might be a baby in it. Well, there was a baby in the road this time. Jeez, how do you even process that?
It was so out, you're looking at, you don't even believe, like, what's that in the road? It doesn't compute. Thankfully, I responded the way I should, but I mean, if I hadn't been looking, or I mean, who knows? That was just my life. How would my life have been different had the guilt?
Yeah. Nicholas Starov. Walking equals prison. Owning bleach equals murderer. Yeah, pretty much. At least in the case we're looking at in Wisconsin.
I'm not following that one thing. I'm still recovering from Murdoch.
Yeah. Meat Popsicle says that man who was taking care of his kid, taking him to the park, gets 10 years. Pedos get less time.
Well, sometimes. Sometimes.
But nobody should get 10 years for that.
No, 10 years is ridiculous. It wasn't even a crime. They shouldn't have prosecuted it.
My phone contains documented musings, otherwise known as notes on a phone. What about fighting to get his kids back? Do you know what happened after that with the kid?
Well, he did go home. Did he get his kid? Well, I will say that I've lost track of it a little bit. I know that he has another brush with the law. So, and this is oftentimes what happens is that, when you dodge a lightning bolt, it should change your life, but oftentimes it does not. It's tough. So I know
generally,
but he's had a new brother.
You lose your child, you lose custody of your kids, they get sent into the state, and then you get your conviction overturned. I assume they just don't that afternoon go, okay, here's your kids back.
Well, his wife, girlfriend, wife, it was his wife's.
I mean, other cases. I mean, just generally. I mean, that's something I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, that's a Danny On question, actually, right?
Okay, we got that one there. And Taylor, what did the guy get charged for again? Real quick for those joining late.
Child neglect. Felony
child neglect,
which is culpable negligent supervision.
And Netflutter says Legal Vice Steve was asking for relief in the sentence. How surprised were you when it was instead reversed?
No. I was asking for a reversal. I did ask as an alternative for a lesser if they would done it. But the briefing, sometimes that's not clear, but the briefing was definitely, I was asking for a reversal. And then
how surprised were you got it? 0.6%.
Well, I'm surprised anytime I get any kind of relief or any written opinion, because I don't see there's no because I'm surprised whenever they do anything, because it's so low chances. I feel strongly about a lot of my cases. And this was one of them. I mean, I orally argued this one, so I felt strongly about it. I feel strongly about a lot of my cases. Maybe we should talk a little too about oral arguments, because I've had over 400 appellate cases, right? I've had, I don't know, I think I've had about 80 jury trials in trial division. Mm-hmm. That's prosecution and defense side. On the prosecution side, I've had over 3,000 cases, which is like pleas mostly, then some of those subset would be trials, about 80 trials, about 400 direct appeals. Of those, I've probably done less than 10 oral arguments. Wow. One of the reasons is because I generally stand by my briefing. I do written opinion. I write. Appellate is all written. I only orally argue on just a few things. That is, number one, when the state misrepresents something.
Hang on, Steve. Let's clear off these 7 comments so we can. I have some questions about this myself. Let's burn through these as quick as possible. Katie P says, I don't know if I missed this, but how can they claim he's drunk when they didn't test it? Their whole argument was based on he's impaired, so he can't look after his child.
Well, it doesn't have to be objectively determined. You don't have to have, in order for the impairment. And that was one of the questions what the judges said is, how impaired is impaired enough? Is that relevant? See, and I said it is relevant, but it is necessary, but not sufficient in this case. So I think just him being drunk is insufficient alone, standing alone, for the charge to stand. It's a factor that can be considered within the totality of the circumstances, right? How drunk he was is obviously a burden on the state. They could have tested that and determined specifically, but they did not. so they can claim because they can drunk because you can observe that. Like, what if he was on some pill and he tests 0 on the alcohol level? Well, then he's high and he's falling down high on some crazy drug. They can observe the behavior. So I think that it can be viewed. You can determine intoxication by extrinsic evidence. You don't need to have the test in order to determine that.
I should know better than to try to clear questions quickly with you, Steve.
Sorry, you got a question. Go ahead.
That was so great. Deborah Breeden again. Florida judicial revenge. School neglect caused my son's epilepsy. Used CI to falsely diagnose mental health condition. Dang, I don't know anything about it. It sucks if you know.
Oh, this is the one that's in the second DCA.
Yeah.
Outside my jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And you know, these
best of luck. Yeah, I don't know.
People don't know the wreckage that the criminal justice system imposes on our society. It hurts people. If you're a convicted felon, it really puts your foot in a hole. That halves your potential expected income. It's very brutal. The system is really not a pretty thing. I just want people to understand that it's necessary, but it's such a powerful weapon, and it's been weaponized against the lower part of our society. And then now that's bleeding up into it's been weaponized against political opponents of the regime in power. And that's a very dangerous thing. We really need to establish balance within the system. Over empowering prosecutors is one of the big problems we have.
And these three sort of go hand in hand. We'll do two quick and then the other one. Mr. Endo says, what exactly do you achieve by putting people in jail? And VJ says, don't you have the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act in the U.S.?
No.
Prison doesn't rehabilitate.
When in fact, the statute in Florida is that jail is meant to punish. It is explicit. It is a punishment. It is not rehabilitation. Now, again, there needs to be balance in that because these people will get out. Most of them go to jail for a year or 2 years. Then they're back in the society. Now, what do you have? If you don't have rehabilitation, you have just created. You can institutionalize people. You can hurt them. A couple of my clients. I have one client, well, two clients actually, who got out of life sentences, and but one of them was wrongfully convicted and spent 6 years in prison and was released. And he has to have a therapy dog now because of the trauma of being put in prison for 6 years for something he didn't do. No prior record, life sentence, did 6 years. And now he's basically very injured. He needs to have a therapy dog because of the trauma of having gone what he through. So there really needs to be a bigger push on rehabilitation.
Yeah, and by and large, prison just teaches the convicted how to be better criminals and avoid the same mistakes the next time around.
Now, there is a segregation from society effect. Like I said, in a certain percentage of very violent people that are the recidivists, you want those people to be separated from society. Absolutely, I get that, and so that it does serve a purpose to protect the society from the worst elements who are violent, sociopathic kind of people.
And McRib enthusiast, Stephen, do sentencing score sheets help reduce bias in sentencing? My hypothesis, no, it increases it.
No, I disagree. I like the sentencing score sheet, actually. Generally, when used with a little bit of check and wise, like the example of the bad sentencing score sheet is the one with the spray can, okay? Mm-hmm. The problem is, and I think that in Florida, and I have taught classes on the score sheet in Florida, which is very specific. I think the score sheet should be the default sentence. So no matter if you try a jury, whatever you do, unless there's something that's not accounted for in the score sheet, that should be your sentence. It should be predictable. It should be, and then it's evenly applied, regardless of race, class, status, anything. You have a statute. It's very clean. I like the score sheet. The problem is then you get judges who use the score sheet and then ramp it up. So it's like in for example, in Kelly, I think he scored 18 months or something. I forget exactly. So he gets 18 months. He should have been given 18 months. But this judge, he's a tough judge. He's going to be the guy with a cigar. He chops the thing and he's like, I'm a tough on crime judge. So he maxes him out. Well, why are you doing that? The state has established a guideline what is my guy? Why is Kelly so much worse than anybody else? He's not. So to me, if he had applied the score sheet, it would have been fair. Sometimes there's a punishment, there's a trial punishment, but you have a constitutional right to a trial. But judges punish you for going to trial, and they max you out. And I'm very much opposed to that. I had a good judge, Kim Hammond, who was actually a quarterback for FSU. He actually beat the Gators when he was quarterback at FSU. So he's in the FSU Hall of Fame.
He's a hero.
He's a hero to you Seminoles out there. Anyways, he was my sentencing judge. He did a lot of my trials a lot of my cases when I was in prosecution. And he would go with a score sheet. That's what his policy. And the more I look back, the more wise I think that was. It's like if you plea or if you lose a trial, regardless, you get the score sheet. That's the thing. And if you can downward depart if there's mitigation, you can upward depart if there's aggravation. But generally, he's going to go with a score sheet. I thought that was a very good rule. But the thing is judges come from the prosecutor's office. They're vindictive and they want to be the tough on crime judge. And so they max everybody out. It's ridiculous. It's vindictive and it's not called for. But the racial disparity thing is a big issue, especially on the left. But the score sheet is very fair. I say if you go with a score sheet, then you're weighing non-racial factors and people are getting what they did, not some other factor that's not accounted for.
Oh, we've currently got 1,100 people here.
1,100 people.
This is a big one. Hey, now 1,114 people. 2 quick comments, and then we'll talk about the oral arguments. Uncle Bob's B says, falling down drunk? Question for officer. How many times did he fall in 200 yards?
Right.
Allegedly once. Deborah Breeden. Thanks, Steve. Friend speaks my mind. Quaker.
Yes. This is Deborah again. This is the one with the second DCA case.
Yeah, I don't know what to say when people have these problems that I have no control over. I'm a
facts
fixer. I want to make everything right.
There's so many facts that you don't know here. So it's a complicated thing.
But seriously though, you were absolutely correct that and that's why I kind of emphasize this whenever I do these trial streams or whenever like the O.J. Simpson trial. I emphasize that the government literally. How serious are criminal proceedings? The government literally has the power and authority to kill you.
Right. It's a dangerous
That's
thing.
how serious.
In many ways, not just through the criminal system, but
Yeah.
they can send you off to war too, or get us into war and get us bombed. So the government is important. By the way, Porcelain Thunder says, just tighten the rules on the score sheet, take any subjectivity out of the rules hand. Let me just respond one more thing on the score sheet.
Yeah.
See, I think the way is, if the judge goes downward departs off the score sheet, they have to do a written findings. I think the same thing should go when they go up on the score sheet. So if they don't, no, they can just go. So that's a bottom, but there's no requirement to go up. So I think, like in this case, this judge should have had to justify in writing why he maxed this guy out.
In my head, it makes more sense to go the other way. If someone's going to increase it, they should be required to justify it in writing rather than.
Yeah, but all those judges are all a bunch of liberal softies, and they let everybody off. That's why the score sheet exists.
Rehabilitation for criminals. What does that mean, really? And what rehabilitates, says Jonathan.
That's a good question.
A philosophical question. Yeah.
Well, it's also a practical question. Do we have the ability to actually rehabilitate? There's life skills, there's structure. I remember, I visited several prisons when I was prosecuting because I felt it was important for me to understand where I was sending people. And I did that 3 times. And I remember this one guy, and you go to the prisons and they're all very friendly people. People don't understand that criminals are just average Joes. And I remember this one guy, and he was in prison, and he was for, I think, attempted first-degree murder. And he'd had a bunch of cars. He's like, well, this guy, I was talking to him. He's like, well, this guy was going to stole my car. And I was driving up and I was going to kill him. And I was like, but why do you seem like such a nice guy? And he's like, yeah, well, when I'm on cocaine, I'm a different guy. He's like, here in prison, I'm safe. I'm happy. This is where I should be. Because when I get out, I know I will do cocaine again. And when I get cocaine, I become a murderous guy. So he's like, this is where I need to be. That was a fascinating deal. He's a lifer. Quite of an interesting insight there.
Well, you wanted to talk about the oral arguments. Because,
right.
You took exception with my comment that is, that's your last chance. That's your lifeline. You can emphasize a good brief, or you can blow a good brief with your
Ah,
oral
there we
arguments.
okay. We just hit the second one, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty comfortable in my oral argument skills, as you can tell. So I'm not too worried about it. But I think that what happens is the consensus in our office, at least in the old wizened ones who used to be in there. I came in and I was the young pup, is that it can only hurt you because in a written brief, everything's under control. You have written your brief, you've replied, it's all in writing, it's all there. The judges have to read it and have to deal with your arguments as you framed them, and you've taken many weeks to frame them as best you can, right? You go to an oral argument, you got a panel of 3 judges. All right. Well, let's say you got 1 judge for you and 1 against, you got 1 in the middle. They're debating something that you are not aware of, right?
And tell them how this proceeds, though.
What do you mean?
You have this great presentation all worked up, and
right. Well, and then they just and the Davis.
Well, Steve, now are you saying that this doesn't work that way?
Well, see, yeah, and I try to.
Well, now look at this, Steve. Now I know what you're thinking. That's how it works.
And the thing is you have to immediately stop talking once the judges start talking. The Davis case is a great example.
About that, by the way.
I know. Well, it's okay. That was a required oral argument.
Yeah.
But you have to stop talking immediately. And you've got a panel of judges, like in the Supreme Court, you've got, how many, 7, 9 of them up there, and they all want to talk. And so you're trying to say the first set. And then, okay, well, let me answer the question this way. You see okay, then we go here and we've got, you see, that's the way the oral argument goes.
Yeah.
Now, what happens in, let's say, the 3-judge panel in the 5th? So you've got 3 judges. 1 is in the middle and 2, one's for you, one's against you. They know what the issue is that they're debating. You don't. I'm sitting there. I don't know what the big unresolved question is. Now, if I don't talk, they can resolve it amongst themselves and I might win. All right. But if I go there and the judge that's against me comes up and says, well, counselor, you would admit that Mr. Kelly was falling down drunk and he was so drunk he couldn't even wake up. And I'll say, well, I'll concede that for the purpose of this argument. Well, maybe that was the issue that was the swing judge. Like, I don't really think they were the thing. But now I've just conceded the point and I just lost. You see, but the judges know what the issue is, and the judge that's against me is going to trick me into agreeing to something that sways the middle judge. So I feel that you really need to be careful orally argument. I only orally argue when I have a purpose to it. So I'll go through some of the reasons.
Yeah.
One of them, I mean, unless you want, I don't want to stop.
No, good.
That's
what we're here for.
For example, if the state misrepresents you the facts or the law, I orally argue. Because I want to catch them. I want them to have to stand up because I know they're going to get subjected to the grilling too. And I'm going to point out they misrepresented this fact. That is not what this case says. That's not what this facts are. That is not in what the facts are, right? But I double check it, but I make sure. But if they're misrepresenting something, I'm going to call them on it. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is, and I think that the video case, one of the first cases I did when I was just a young little baby appellate attorney, I did one case. It was all dependent on this video, and it was a shoplifting video. And my client just didn't shoplift. It wasn't on the video. And the only evidence was the video. And so my whole brief was like, watch the video, right? But I'm not confident that they're watching the video. Okay. I think they could go back there and rubber stamp it and rely on the briefs and never watch the video. So I want those judges to watch the video before they rule. So I orally argued it because then they got to prep for my opinion. And I remember because when I argued that, they came out from behind their little curtain and say, we all were sitting back there rolling and trying to figure out where it was. And we couldn't see it either. And that went from a guilty felony to a not guilty. So they hadn't watched the video until the day of the oral argument. So that proves my point.
Yeah.
And so that was another big win that I had. A person went from a convicted felon to not a convicted felon.
Madge says, hey, Steve, Britt here going on a coast-to-coast U.S. road trip in a few months. We'll be in Miami 4th of July. Any suggestions for what we should do?
Yes, stay out of Miami. No, actually, the Miami Aquarium is great. If you can scuba dive, there's great diving around there. It's a beautiful town. Of course, you want to go down to South Beach. Stay in South Beach. Stay in one of those boutique hotels if you can. That's pretty cool. 4th of July, of course, you're going to have fireworks. In Miami,
if you can find a hotel for Miami on the 4th of July.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of like Miami. I wouldn't want to live there. I don't like big cities. I want to be in I want to be in happy land in Tennessee, goat land.
Well, Mr. Goldenrod here says criminals are not average Joes.
Oh, yes, they are.
They're everybody. And
don't believe that.
It's the cliche saying that we commit X number of jailable offenses every day unknowingly.
The criminal law does not define morality. And everybody makes mistakes. Some of them are criminalized and some of them are not. You know, I understand that there's a certain segment of the population that is so far gone that as to be unrecognizable from what you and I would normally consider normal. But most of my clients are very personable. Most of them can't protect themselves from the police. I remember I have a policy that I never turn down a homeless person when they ask for food. So I never give money to anybody who's begging. But if somebody says they're hungry, I'll say, do you want me to buy you a sandwich? And I believe it's a Christian duty to feed the hungry. Most of the time they're taking money and buying alcohol or drugs. So I don't feed that habit, but I will feed them. So I remember this one guy, he's in his wheelchair and he was saying, hey, I'm hungry. So I said, well, let me get you a sandwich. So I went into Walgreens, got him a sandwich, got him a pickle. He wanted a pickle. And he was an alcoholic, but he was in a wheelchair and his legs were all messed up. But he is also lonely. And so I just sat down and talked with him for maybe 20 minutes. And once we got over the fact that I wasn't going to be suckered into giving him money, like I want a bus ticket. He's giving me, I'm like, yeah, it's not happening. But I was like, but I'll talk to you. So we talked for a while and he's like, okay, I get trespassed all the time. And here I am, I'm on the sidewalk. Is this trespass? He's like, where can I go and not be trespassing? I'm homeless. I'm a drunk. I live on the streets. I'm in my wheelchair. And he's a victim of all robberies. People shake him down. They rob him all the time. He's, abused. But he's like, where can I go and not be trespassed? And he looked around. He looked right. Can't be here. Can't be on the sidewalk. Can't be there. Can't be there. Nowhere. He's not wanted. He's thrown away. It's really a problem. I mean, I don't have great solutions on it. I'm just saying, when you say that these people are inhuman, are not human, and they're subject to being thrown away, I do not agree. I deal with a lot of tons of criminals. I mean, we deal with them every day. And these are human beings. They're given a lot of bad cards a lot of times. They make bad moral decisions. Drugs are very high. Mental illness is a big problem that we basically throw the mentally ill into prison in Florida. And anyways, enough rant.
No, I mean, that's what we're here for.
So did we get the oral argument thing? So I called them on it. I want, when I have something like watching the video, I want them to see that. I have to have a reason to orally argue. It's not like the default is to orally argue. I have to have a reason. Like, for example, the case that I'm going to do on the cost of incarceration, I intend to take that to the U.S. Supreme Court because the U.S. Supreme Court has such high requirements on you must exhaust all remedies. So I want to do everything humanly possible. That includes everything, including oral argument. If I waive oral argument, the Supreme Court could look at that and says, well, you didn't exhaust your state remedy. So I'm not going to give them any reason to deny my cert petition when it comes.
How long does it usually take for the appeals to come up once everything gets rolling?
Well,
when do you expect
this one coming up? Well, I filed the initial brief already. So the sequence is what happens when you get 30 days to appeal in Florida. So somebody says, I got life in prison. What's that about appeals again? I get a free attorney. So that's what they do. And then 30 days. And then the record is, so what happens is the record is completely typewritten by court reporters. So it's assembled into a record and a trial record, transcripts of all hearings. We have to assemble and get a complete record. And that takes usually 3 to 5 months, maybe 3 months. It can be 5 months, depends on but it takes several months. Once I get that, then I need to review it top to back and master the record. That takes, I work very fast. And so I can get through huge briefs very quickly, huge amounts of paper. I'm a very fast reader. So once I do that, let's say it takes me 3 weeks. I file my initial brief, assuming it's a merit brief. Half my briefs are not merit briefs. Half my briefs are Anders briefs, which we can talk about. But I file a merit brief. Then the state has a chance to respond. It usually takes them a month or two. And then I file a reply, which I do right on top of that, which is like within 15 days. Then it takes the court about 6 to 8 months to rule. So it's a year process, and it's all in writing. Clients call me and they expect tea and sympathy. I don't do tea and sympathy. I mean, there's very little that they can add. It's either in the record or it's not. If it's not in the record, I can't pay attention to it. It's a very different process than trials. We could talk about Anders Priest when he does some super chats.
Paula Williams says, did I miss it? 400 appeals, 10 oral arguments. Of the 10, how many did you prevail on?
That's a good question. Let's see. I don't know. We'll see. I prevail on cases that I don't orally argue. So I don't really keep track. I mean, I don't know. Maybe three orally of the oral arguments. Of the cases I prevail on, see that it's different. An appellate win is different from what the client may perceive as a win. It's hard to explain this, but like,
congratulations, you win. You get to go back to trial.
Well, like I had a case where a guy did 22 years in prison and then was resentenced and got another $115,000 restitution fee that I had reversed on appeal. So he did not have to pay the restitution. He did the 22 years, but he got released, but he did not have to pay the restitution. So that's an appellate win. How much he thinks it's a win, I don't know. So I've had quite a number of those, but I don't know.
Well, Matthew Self says, just tweeted at you, Jeff. Show Steve my artistic concept I drew of him in 5 minutes.
Uh-oh, here it comes, Matt. Matt's my buddy from the oil fields. He's an oil line inspector. Real people, real work. And see, I prefer those people much more than lawyers.
And this is, I've written an article on this, Steve, I believe is what we're going to call this one. Just quickly here, where did we go?
Well, my brother is a welder, and I tell him like every day, what do I see? I got a bunch of paper on my desk. He's got like something he's built.
There we go. Was that you or me?
That was mine. What?
Okay.
He's just randomly barking.
There you go. I've written an article on this.
It's
an article, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Okay. Very cute. I don't know. I don't know if I should how I should take that one.
So right now we've got about 15 more minutes to go here. Gosh, the time went by really super fast. It's already been almost an hour and a half.
Yeah. Slides
now,
well, you want to hear
this, what do we? I want to hear in this last 10, 15 minutes what you think we need to know about you and what you do as a person.
Well, see, what I do. What I work is I'm a criminal appellate lawyer, and I advise the trial division. My main strength is, I think, strategy. So I tend to strategize with our trial teams behind the scenes. And so I like doing that. I like mentoring the trial teams. I like mentoring appellate attorneys. I train all of our appellate attorneys. I train some of our trial attorneys. I like helping people out. I like helping people become better people. So that's what I do at work, and I like that. It's a good job and I'm good at it. So I enjoy that, but that's not who I am. It's part of who I am.
Are you? Yes.
Who are you? Well, I'm glad you know. I've got a new book coming out. As soon as Nick gets done with the foreword, it's ready to go. It's called Prepare, the Handbook for Individual Freedom. And I'm a big believer that is more about who I am. And it's also
I should put the emphasis somewhere else. Who are you? Not who are you? Who are you?
What do you mean?
Gosney?
Explain that.
Who is Steve Gosney?
I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a mentor. I'm a Catholic Christian. Let's see, what else? I'm a son. That's what else can you say? I try to do my best. I'm a human being.
Now I'll put the emphasis back where it was. Who are you?
Yes. Do we really know who Murdoch is?
Do we really know who Steve Gosney is? I would argue we do.
Yeah.
You're pretty surface with yourself, and I by no means mean shallow. I mean, you're an honest person.
I am. I believe that I believe what you see is what you get. I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty complex. I don't think that. I don't know if you really what you see is what you get. Maybe I mean, I'll be as honest with you. I believe in absolute truth as much as I can. It's not attainable. I don't think absolute truth is attainable within this world. I think we're all fallen creatures and truth is not available to us simply because of our fallen nature. However, there is more true and there's less true and there's false. And I think that we have a duty to try to fill the world with what we see as truths, because we're so buried with lies about people seeking power and manipulation. So
how do you do that?
Well, you try to look inside yourself. You read my book, Prepare, whenever the hell it comes out. It talks about this because it's hard to seek the truth. It's hard to find out, am I really speaking the truth here? I don't know. I mean, you speak, we're limited in words. We're limited in symbols. We're limited by our brains. There's so many limitations. So when you say, I'm saying the truth, can I really know that? And so we have to really look inwards and outwards and constantly check and approach the world, I think, with humility and gratitude. If we have those two qualities, it helps us seek the truth and aim towards that. So I don't know. These are big questions, and they're big philosophical.
They are. And who formed you this way? I mean, who were the people that molded you?
Well, my mom,
these ideals.
Well, my mom was, I was a single mom. She raised me. And my dad was kind of a tough person. He was a big time lawyer in this town, 40 years, hired 5 judges, 5 people that eventually became judges out of his firm. But I always had a strange with him. It was a very kind of abusive situation. And I would always, and I'm very introverted and inward looking. So dealing with my dad and the issues that I had to deal with my dad and overcoming those things, I've overcome a lot, has been a work of building myself up from kind of a bottom foundation up over time. I mean, I'm still working on it. We're all working on it, but we try to take those cards we're dealt with and build ourselves up to the best we can be. And that's a lifetime effort for me. And it's not been easy. I've had setbacks. I've had challenges. People, they say I'm this academic guy. I mean, not when I was in high school, and even in college, I was lost. And it's taken me a lot. I mean, Robert Johnson's this book right here, helped me a lot. I'm very thoughtful. And so I look at archetypes. That's Robert Johnson,
Not the Robert Johnson I was thinking of.
This is a great book. And if you're a female, read She. But it's taken introspection and building yourself, but we're all still building, right?
Matthew Self says, Steve is the friend that everyone doesn't know they need, but are glad to have when they meet him. Well, I would second that. And Mighty Meat said, you're an authentic person. He said that earlier.
I got to have dinner with Mighty Meat. Did you know that? He came down to Daytona. Yeah, he's a good guy. His wife is beautiful too. Beautiful.
100%. He is the same in person as on screen. Great guy that loves to talk.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, see, and I just think I know we talk about it and joke about it a lot, but it is serious that you're not a pushover. You're not shallow by any means. From as much as I know you, the I guess the empathic feelings I get from you are very much in control of yourself.
Self-discipline is part of it, but that's part of freedom. We should all seek to gain control of ourselves, because if we are enslaved, again, back to Prepare, which is my magnum opus, is to you are not free if you are enslaved by your childhood issues. See, there's more slavery than just external threat to government tyranny. There's tyrannies that come from your past. There's tyrannies that come from bad habits. There's tyrannies that come from lack of self-discipline. If your lack of self-discipline, you are letting your passions and your bestial nature control you. You are not living a free life. So, freedom is more, self-discipline is a big part of that. And so control, understanding yourself, and I have my ups and downs. I get depressed sometimes, it's like people don't say you're always happy. Well, sometimes, but, there's there's things, but the thing is, we get older. I learn to avoid those things that get me depressed, and avoid those things that try to learn about yourself and travel to those things that make your life happier, make your life better, and bring your family up. So, does that help?
I think there's a lot of people out there that, just from what they've seen of you around the law tubes, is that I think you make people not want to disappoint you.
Good. Well, that's what I hope. I want people to be better. I mean, that's, in fact, and part of this whole law thing, this internet thing that I'm doing and these books and all, a lot of this is because my son went off to college. I mean, my mission in life was to be the dad that I never had. And this is going to get me emotional again, but I wanted to overcome the daddy issues that I had and that have burdened me my whole life. And so one of those things was to be the best dad that I could possibly be to my son. And I think I've achieved that goal.
You have an amazing son. I love talking to that kid.
Right. Great kid. He wants to be on some more, by the way. So we'll get him on. Maybe
bring him on
next week. My wife's going to Paris. So we'll have some more free time. And son will be home for spring break. But yeah, so okay, but once he went off to college, like I gave him wings, I gave him freedom, and I gave him the wings to be free, right? I think that my next mission in life is to try to bring that to the world, because the world needs fathers. The world needs guidance and needs somebody out there encouraging them and saying you can be better than what you are. And that when you're doing something right, like my friend Danielle, I think she's in the chat.
Yeah.
I want you to be better than and we're going to fall down, and we've all had challenges, and we need encouragement as people. So, a lot of this is what I'm doing, and what I wrote this book for is to bring people, to make us better, to rid the world as many lies. We're lying to ourselves and lying to others. Let's get rid of that. Let's be better. Let's accomplish it. I just had I'm getting nice emails from people, and somebody was asking me for counseling, that they have disabilities and they're in pain, but they want to contribute to the world and want to work. Well, and I advise them on that. And so I think that my next mission in life, because now I've got to move my goalposts, right? I've achieved my life's mission. And if I died right now, I'd be happy. My mission has been accomplished. But now I'm moving that into the wider world as an older man, to try to spread that wealth and try to make everybody around me better. So I want you to reach for something more than what you are, and compare yourself not to me, compare yourself to who you were yesterday and who you can be tomorrow, because that's the only standard that matters. Don't be jealous of people. Don't tear people down. Build people up around you. Do something for others, and it makes you a better person. These are all very important lessons. So that's kind of my new thing, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing at this point. And I hope if the message is resonating, then great. I think there is a need for fathers in the world, and I know I didn't have one. I accept the right negative example.
Yeah, I know we dug deeper into you than I thought we would. Just kind of went with the promptings to ask you questions there. Couple things are clear. One, then we'll talk about that book here in the last little bit. I wish I was drunk says, how are we, lads and lasses? Yes, I'm late again. You got here just in time for the end, but don't go anywhere. After this is over, we'll all be automatically redirected to the upcoming Zachariah Anderson Day 6 stream. So hang tight for that. Flux says, Steve, you should be receiving your painting today.
Oh, yes. She's going to paint my cover of my new book. So she's trading that for one book. And that's sweet. Flux is sweet for doing that. And I'm honored, and I'm looking forward to it like you wouldn't believe. Flux is great. I'm so blessed. See, that's the thing. I mean, it's like making friends at this point in my life is really unusual. Most people's friendship list is kind of static when I'm 54. So like I'm 55. How old am I? I was born in 67. I don't even know. But like making friends at this life and expanding my friend circle is like such a blessing. I mean, God, I love friends. Yeah. So
that's why all these people from my chat that are just like great people, Flux and Danny, she's my homegirl.
Danny I will say I misjudged Danny a little bit. When I first met her, I'm like, somebody this pretty and smart can't be but she has got a lot of substance and depth to her. We got to talk at the Vegas thing, and she's got a great husband. and she is just
He's funny. He's a good guy.
very interesting person. Danny is somebody who's really moved up in my rankings. I mean, I'm like, wow, you're really quite an interesting person. Very deep thinker, very thoughtful, substantive person. You know?
She's one of my favorite people on the planet. Love Danny to death. She's so cool.
Really interesting person. And she's not like you think that person's had it easy. I mean, that's the thing. You know, it's like, oh, she's so beautiful and smart. Oh, she's just got the golden path, right? No, she's had challenges and she's overcome them, and she's made very good choices with her life about, go ahead.
Valhalla and other people that have just come from my chat that are just amazing people. And I don't have time to list everybody else there, Mighty. I mean, it's everybody over there because we've got about 3 minutes left. So I want to make sure that Steve gets to grift this new book. The Lonely Cockapoo says, I think we can all agree that Steve is 2 open books. Keep doing what you do, Steve. You're pretty cool too, Jeff. Well, yeah.
Well, and the other thing is like, I have my next book already written, although that's easy to say because it's a children's book. And I need to get...
And Jonathan, Gosney coverage of the Murdoch appeal, not a chance in hell. I can answer that for him.
Prepare, the Handbook for Individual Freedom. You can get it at stevegosney.com. All my stuff is at stevegosney.com. I'm working on some other projects, some little fun projects. I'm working on a children's book, multiple children's book that infuse entertainment with Christianity and values. It's called My Difficult Dog, and it's written. I just need to get it illustrated. And that's going to be the next thing. I've got another book after that called Brucey, the One-Eyed Wonder Dog, which is going to be children's books, because the most valuable times I ever had with my son were sitting down with him, reading to him before, and he'd say, we reading like The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and Hungry Caterpillar. And so I want to do some things like that. That kind of goes in line with Prepare and about being a good parent. This is Prepare, the Handbook for Individual Freedom, about freeing your mind from tyrannies, internal and external. Get it only at stevegosney.com. Not available on Amazon, not available on Barnes & Noble, not available anywhere except from me directly. And pre-orders get the upgraded cover, by the way, which is going to be a gold foil cover, which is a $2 option. So thank you to definitely not Brandon for contributing. He gave me a big contribution when he was on your stream. And I've decided to put that into the cover of the book so that anybody who pre-orders gets the gold foil cover, which is a $2 per book option.
Oh, and you've triggered my PTSD. My son is 22 and a half years old, and I just have flashbacks to Eric Carle books.
What?
Eric Carle wrote The Hungry Caterpillar.
Oh, I loved Hungry Caterpillar.
The walrus, what do you hear? I still have like most of these Eric Carle books memorized in my head because they were just on my repeat all day long, all night long. Would you go to sleep?
That's what Stevie, my son, would do. We'd read the Great Pumpkin. And at the end of it, he'd go, pumpkin patch. He'd go, again, read again, Daddy. Okay, read it again.
I was kind of like fall asleep. And then because I stopped talking and it got silent, that would wake him up. Read it again. Oh, no. Anything you want to say here in the last 2 minutes?
Yes. Anybody in the chat needs to pressure Ricada to finish his forward.
Everybody message him.
Everybody message says Steve needs his forward. Just give him, all he needs to say is he needs to text me and say, yes. That's all he needs to do. And then I will get it to the printer. It's about 3 weeks between now and him finishing his forward that I can get that book out. I need to get it out. It's the most important thing I've done my entire life, other than raising my son and being a good husband.
Steve, thank you so much for talking about the Kelly case, for talking about yourself, and for giving us a little more insight into you and who you are and what makes you tick.
Great. Well, you're going to return the favor. Come over to Rumble with me one of these days.
Anytime we can get it scheduled. I got nothing going on. So
I know. Yes, you do. You're a busy guy, but thank you for having me on. Thank you, chat. I'm sorry I get distracted by chat, so I haven't been watching it because there's all my friends. I'm like, hey, it's Mighty Beats. Look, it's Val Holloway. Look, it's Flux. It's Danielle, and look, Rose is there, and Porcelain, and all my buddies in the Legal Vice Squad, MG Law, and all these good people you've got in your Vice Squad. You got the best chat. So. Thank you for it. And I'll be back on. When Prepare comes out, we'll do another one too. Maybe we're talking about.
Let's do that. Mm-hmm. All right. So everybody, what's going to happen now is we're going to shut this down. Thank you, mods. Thank you, people in chat. Thank you for the super chats that have come in. Thank you for those of you that subscribed. And on your way out, Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Let's check the poll. Let's see why everybody hit the like and subscribe. In fourth place, 15% of you said you hit like and subscribe to support Captain Gosman. 19% of you said to help find the knife. 23% of you said because Steve always does it. And 43%, the number one reason people hit the like and subscribe was because Steve did it. That's why. Sorry, just the silly poll ending that there. And we should all automatically refunneled over to the Zachariah Anderson trial. I will be there in about 2 minutes. So hang tight. Wait for me there. If you don't get automatically sent over to my other stream, then do it manually. Go to Legal Vices and check it out. And go to stevegosney.com. Check out what he's got there. Make sure you order his books and you pre-order the Prepare book, and you'll be in darn good hands. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Good to see everybody.
We're out. Bye. See you over there.